You guys are awesome. Let's see here. All right, so it's blasphemy what Ksenia says, and now we know. We've looked at Yahweh. We've seen what it's talking about there, and so now we're going to go to the Mishnah. The Mishnah, it was written in the year 200. It's Jewish literature written by the rabbis in the book Berachot. And it's so amazing, actually. This is the one Mishnah book that I have. Chapter 9, 5. I didn't bring it over here, but basically what it says is, and I've looked up every single one of these sources. It says here that in the rabbis in the Second Temple time, they made takanot, a rabbinical rule. Okay, in this, like basically in Second Temple time, which is the time of the first century, the rule was that you should say the name, that you should greet each other in the name and say Yud He Vav He be with you. That this should be, the Israelites should greet each other. Which by the time the Mishnah was written by the rabbis, there was a ban; you weren't allowed to say the name, which is crazy to find in their book. That actually at one time you had to say the name. It was like if you didn't, you were a blasphemer. But even within a short time, 100 years later, you could not say the name. So this is where the confusion starts. But if you could say the name, why could you say the name? Why were they so emphatic that you should say the name? This is in the Mishnah. And one Jewish commentator in the 1800s came up with a very, I think, reasonable conclusion that it was so you could tell the difference between the Jews and the Samaritans. If you went up to them and said, Yod He Vav He be with you, the Samaritans would be like Ashima or Jupiter or something. They'd be like, fire burn, So when the Messiah said to them, you worship who you don't know. But we, the Yehudim, we worship who we know. And the salvation, the truth, the deliverance begins with the Yehudis, man. This is so intense. What does Paul say? What advantage has the Jew? Much in every way. This is serious. This is serious stuff. Serious business. So that's conjecture, but I just thought I would share it because I think it makes a lot of sense, and seeing what the Messiah said to the woman is amazing. So why was this ban on the name placed by the rabbis? I'm going to read from the book. So this book everyone should buy, Nehemiah Gordon's Shattering of the Conspiracy of Silence. I mean, this is it was about the time I finished this book that I had that dream. And I was just thinking about the book. The book didn't move me that much at first. It brought out a lot of good stuff, but it wasn't enough. I mean, I was pretty entrenched in my tradition of Yahweh pronunciation was correct, that even with all this information, I still needed to do a lot of research to prove it to myself either way. But definitely, it got me thinking. And I thought it was an amazing book right away. But, he brings out so much evidence. If you had to go for one source, I would say buy this book is the best thing you could do. Nehemiah Gordon, Shattering the Conspiracy of Silence. So chapter 8, page 93. Listen to this story. When I first read it, I thought it was the Messiah he was talking about. This gaunt Galilean preacher drags a large wooden beam down the center of a narrow village street. One end of the beam weighs heavily on his right shoulder, causing him to hunch over. The other scrapes along the ground, cutting its way through the filth. The preacher's left eye is swollen shut from the earlier beating. Villagers line the street, some shouting curses at the preacher, others weeping over his plight. A Roman soldier steps out of the crowd, swinging a whip through the air. The whip cracks as it breaks the sound barrier, sending a small, startled dog fleeing down the side alley. The whip comes down hard on the preacher's back, spraying bystanders with droplets of blood. A passerby is pressed into service to help carry the heavy beam. When they reach the top of the hill just outside the village, the preacher collapses. The two Roman soldiers secure him to the wooden beam. As a satisfied centurion looks on, the soldier plant one end of the beam in a small hole hewn in the rock and raises the other end with ropes. Today's execution is a rabbi. His name? Hanina ben Teredion. The method of execution? Burning at the stake. The crime? Speaking the name of the Jewish God in public. This is in the land of Israel. So Nehemiah says, when I came across this story of Rabbi Hanina, I couldn't believe it. The Talmud relates that the Romans executed this rabbi sometime between the year 130 and 138 BC. That's the same time that Jupiter temple was going up. During the reign of the Emperor Hadrian, who issued a series of decrees designed to eradicate the Jewish faith. Rabbi Hanina was martyred during the persecutions, after speaking the name of Elohim in public, as the Talmud reports. Here's the Talmud. The Romans brought forth the Rabbi Hanina ben Teradon and asked him, "Why did you engage in the study of Torah?" He answered, "Because Yod-He Vav-He, my Elohim, commanded me." They immediately sentenced him to be burned. They sentenced him to be burned because remember this, he used to pronounce the name the way it is written. Remember, the Smith Goodspeed said that you shouldn't pronounce it the way it's written. That would be corrupt, this Jehovah. But here it says he pronounced it the way it was written. Now this is before the vowel points were written down, so he pronounced the Yod-He Vav-He. There's no way to know for sure. But I think this is one of the keys. He pronounced it the way it's written. The Romans executed Rabbi Hanina for publicly teaching of Torah, and during his illegal lessons, Rabbi Hanina used to pronounce the name the way it was written. This transgression earned him a particularly vicious code of execution, as the Talmud further relates. Now, the Talmud was written in the year 500-ish, 5th century or 6th century, by the rabbis in Babylon. And it's an amazing history book, can learn a lot. I mean, it's volume after volume after volume of rabbinical discourse. They took hold of him and wrapped him in a Torah scroll, surrounded him in a bundle of branches, and set them on fire. So also brought tufts of wool, which they soaked in water and placed over his heart so that he should not expire quickly. They wrapped him in a Torah scroll and burned him alive for saying the name. Okay, so the rabbis had to make a ban on the name. You cannot pronounce the name, we're all going to die. That was the situation in the year 130, 140, they had to stop saying the name or they were going to be killed. Now, you could say it's a fear of man, but still, I understand why they did it. But they still knew the name, right? And so he followed. It was just a bit really similar to what happened in the Maccabean time. And Hadrian patterned his anti-Jewish decrees after the Greeks. And so anyways, he was martyred, and that all came from the Babylonian Talmud, Avodah Zarah 17b through 18a, if you want to look it up yourself. So, now, that's why there was the ban. Now, Nehemiah, this brother, he holds a master's degree in biblical studies, a bachelor's degree in archaeology from the Hebrew University. He spent his whole life reading Hebrew. He was raised in rabbinical schools as a Pharisee. This man's knowledge of Hebrew is very great, way better than mine. But I know Hebrew well enough that I could go through what he's saying and see what he's saying is true. And, but he claims to have discovered the pronunciation of the name in the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, which we're going to get into. And I think he actually did, but I don't think he was the only one that knew it. And so what we're going to find here, on page, let's see here, it says, in 97, he goes to a Jerusalem rabbi when he thinks he's figured out the vowel points and the way to say the name. So he goes to his friend in Jerusalem, in his book, page 97. He said, when I discovered that the rabbinical ban on Elohim's holy name was instituted as a protective measure against the Roman persecution, I felt like I uncovered a great secret that I needed to share. I decided to approach a young rabbi I knew and hear his opinion. I met him at the synagogue in Jerusalem and started telling about the Romans' execution of Hanina ben Teradon for speaking Elohim's name. He stopped me. The rabbi stopped him midway through, and he said he knew all about it. I then told him about finding the name of Elohim with the full set of vowels in the Aleppo Codex. The true pronunciation of Elohim's name is Yehovah, I announced excitedly. The rabbi leaned back in his chair and responded with a single word, Pashita. In Aramaic, this literally means simple. But in Talmudic jargon, it is a sarcastic way of saying, obviously, Sherlock. And after a long, awkward pause, he asked me never to speak the Almighty's holy name in his presence again. That's a rabbi in Jerusalem. He knew the name before Nehemiah even told him the name. He's like, yeah, you don't say that. What are you doing, brother? It's crazy. So then he goes to that was a rabbinical rabbi, but now he's going to go to a Karaite rabbi, which is the other major sect. He said, I approached the old Karaite rabbi in Jerusalem and told him I believed that we need to go back and pray in Elohim's name. And it says he strongly objected because the rabbi's family have been Karaites for dozens of generations and have never been in the habit of calling on the name. He insisted this wasn't the Karaite way. However, he could pronounce the name, and he incidentally knew it to be Yehovah even before I shared this detail with him. So one of the main rabbis in Jerusalem of the Karaite faith, they knew it. So here he is, Nehemiah, who wrote this book, he discovered it in these texts. He starts going to these rabbis who knew it the whole time and never told him. And he's telling them, they're like, yeah, we know. All right? So, it's really intense. So, and also, there's no traditional Jewish source that claims Yahweh is the pronunciation. There's not one. So that's huge. Okay, there might be modern ones that were influenced by the same stuff that everyone else was. Remember, the Messiah says the Jews know who they serve, and that the Samaritans were lost, and the salvation is of the Jews, the Yehudim. So this is huge. This is like, what? And if you go, we're not going to go there, but Ezra 4, 1 and 2, which is after the Israelites returned from Babylon, they call the Samaritans the enemies of Judah. Okay. Also, looking at Yahweh a little bit more, the Catholic Church claims that Yahweh is the correct pronunciation. You go on their website, and we know for sure that the Catholic Church for sure serves Jupiter to this day. The Peter statue that they have is the Jupiter statue, and so that those kind of things, like the Vatican. At the Vatican, the Roman Jupiter is the statue of Peter. He's a chief god. They claim that they're sitting on the throne of Peter. So anyways, this is a great conspiracy, and the majority of the biblical world, the scholar world, including Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe this claim of Gesenius, and they are all under the veil, which means we've all been deceived, basically, on this matter. Now, we haven't been deceived on all the matters, but it says in Isaiah 25:7. Let's go there real quick. And then we have to figure out how to prove to pronounce this name. There's still more. And of course, we can't cover every single technical detail, but I think there's enough that when we go home here from this study, there should be enough to be pretty sure. And amazing. Hallelujah. Okay, verse 7. He says, in this mountain he will do away with the shroud that is enveloping all the people, and with the veil that is woven over all the nations. He will swallow up death forever, and the sovereign, the Most High, will wipe away all tears from the faces. So this is important. The Almighty is going to, or Yehovah is going to wipe away all tears from the faces, and he's also going to destroy the shroud, the veil. He's gonna make himself known. And honestly, going into this, think about it. I believed what they told me, that Yahweh was the original pronunciation of the Hebrew of the God of Israel, and that Jehovah was the erroneous translation. I believe that. So the last one that I thought was the true one is Yehovah, for sure. And now I can't. This just shows you what happens when you when you let the Most High lead you, because what I might think is definitely wrong, but what the Most High does is completely true. So what is the truth? Remember what the Messiah says in the Hebrew Matthew. The Messiah says, not one sign or ot or nakuda, dot or vowel point shall be abolished. Okay, this is some big stuff. According to rabbinical writings, the vowel points and pronunciation of the words of Torah were fixed and understood by the first century and even before. This understanding was passed down from teacher to student. So, in the Messiah's day, the vowel points were understood. We have rabbinical writings, and we could go through the Talmud and see all these discussions, but the rabbis used to change the vowel points to change their interpretation of Torah, and they actually wrote about in the Talmud how, if we change the vowel point here, and even though it wasn't written vowel points, they knew through the language what to do, even with just consonants, and it would change it. It's crazy. So the vowel points were 100% established, and it was passed on. These scribes knew it. Okay, so let's go to Romans chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. And it's just, what then is the advantage of the Jew, or the Israelite, or the Yehudi? Or what is the benefit of circumcision? Okay, that's the original sign of the covenant. A great deal in every way. First of all, the most important reason is that they were entrusted with the sacred pronouncements of Elohim. So these were the people that were trusted with the sacred pronouncements of Elohim. All right? The Nakuda, the vowel points, the language, the Torah scrolls. How do you write a Torah scroll? None of us could do it. This is a lifelong job to be a Sopherim. It takes serious training, serious knowledge. This is amazing. And so they have this. Okay, and then he goes in, verse 4. It says, just skipping down, it says, but let Elohim be found true, even if every man be found a liar. So if all of us prove false, the Most High is still true. So even though the Yehudim, some of them went astray, some of the bad things happened, not all of them were faithful, but the Most High is true. Obviously I pronounced the name wrong. I've taught people to pronounce the name wrong. I prove false, but the Most High proves true. And that's what's beautiful, because he deserves the glory. So let Elohim prove true, even if everyone else is false. So it's important. This is where we're going to get to some clarity. When it comes to Hebrew, which is not our native speaking tongue, how do we know how to pronounce any word? And I'll tell you, by the Masoretic vowel points, because other than that, it's just consonants. So either you're going to have learned in synagogue and through rabbis how to read it without the Masoretic notes, but even though everyone goes back and studies these texts with all the vowel points, because it was codified and written down and preserved by the Ben Asher family, and there was another one, the Ben Naphtali family. But the number one most important scriptural text in the world is the Aleppo Codex. Okay, this is the most important manuscript in the whole world by far, and it was copied by a Karaite Yehudi living in Tiberias, which is the land of Israel, in around the year 900. Okay, Aaron Ben Asher at the beginning of the 10th century, the early 900s. This man was from a family of scribes, which in the Hebrew is a Sopherim. The Sopherim tradition that these people held is that, they were still living in the land of Israel, first of all, is that the understanding of the words, how it's to be spoken, the pronunciations, the sounds, etc., the spellings, go back to the prophets. That's their tradition. These are the Sopherim. It is a holy work. What advantage has the Yehudi? Much in every way. They were the ones trusted with the sacred pronouncements of Elohim. This is important. And we can trace it to Ezra, who was a Cohen, a priest, and a Sopherim, a scribe. And he, along with the prophets of his day, established what we call today the Tanakh. It was established 600 BC, let's just say, roughly 500 BC, whatever, from all the books, all the prophets, after Malachi and Ezra and Zechariah, and all those people of that generation, Nehemiah and all those people in that time, that was it for prophecy until the first century when Yochanan or John the Baptist and the Mashiach appeared on the scene. So that was it. These men wrote it down and they taught it. They taught the vowel points. They taught it, and it goes all the way 1,500 years later to this Ben Asher family. It's still in the land of Israel, and they're scribing it down. And people will come to these people and compare their Torah scrolls. Jews from all around the whole world would come there and bring their Torah scrolls, and these men would correct it. In fact, in the Talmud, it says in the temple times, Second Temple times, there was 3 Torah scrolls, okay? And they had it down to 3, let's just say, kosher scrolls. And every other community and synagogue would go and make sure their scroll was checked out by these scribes. And they would go over it and fix one letter here. And they found all these things with all their little corrections and notes on the sides and all this stuff. And you see the remnants, and they found it in Masada, and they found stuff in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But at Masada, they actually found some pre-Masoretic text that's really accurate. Like they think it was very special. That's a whole other thing. There's so much to study. This is like diving into an ocean of a world of scholarship. But anyways, it's amazing. It's fantastic, okay? So this is some important things to know. 1,500 years after Ezra, the 10th century, Judaism was divided between rabbis and Karaite Jews, but all agreed that this Aleppo Codex was accurate. In fact, Rambam, or Maimonides, this 12th century rabbi, he wrote about this in his Mishnah Torah. I think it was the Mishnah Torah. He used it for the base of his own copying of the Torah. And even though he was a rabbi who didn't like the Karaites' interpretation, he said this is the perfect scripture. This is like copying it from the temple scrolls. This is what made this is the accurate vowel pointing, the accurate everything. All right. Even though it was written by a Karaite scholar. Okay. So, However, there's another codex called the Leningrad Codex, which was discovered in the Soviet Union when it collapsed. However, we have the same practice of the vowel points around the name with the Leningrad Codex, which was copied by a rabbi scribe, and the Aleppo Codex, which was made by the Karaite scribe. So you have two different schools of Judaism, both scribes. Both have 98% of the time, there's 7,000 almost times the name is written, and almost every single time it is written with two vowels. And the Masoretic note around it is that and I can show you, and I'll post some stuff on the webpage about it, but there's two vowels, not three. Adonai has three vowels. So for sure, they weren't writing the vowels of Adonai. I mean, but this is what everyone says. They were writing the vowel. So most of the time you're reading it is these two vowels. So it's Yavah or Yawah, however you want to read it. And every once in a while, in both of these ones, this cholam, the O sound, ends up this third vowel that's missing. If you know Hebrew, you'd be like, man, there's missing a vowel, but you don't know which one it is. Boom, it just appears randomly. And some of the places that it appears, I'll tell you in a minute. In the Leningrad Codex, it appears in Exodus 3:2, 13:9, Jeremiah 36:8, Ezekiel 44:5, and Nahum 1:3. Those have all the Yehovah vowels. They're right there. But you can tell that they didn't mean to do that. That wasn't their practice. So if those, even if all three of them are there, it's still not the vowels of Adonai. But most of the time they're not. It's just these two vowels. So that is kind of like the cover-up of everything. This myth that these were the vowels of Adonai. And so this is what got me to look. When Nehemiah brought this up, he's looking at it. His job was to compare these Masoretic texts to the Aleppo Codex, this amazing book from 1,000 years ago. And he knows, he's looking at it, he's like, man, there's just these two vowels, and then all of a sudden he just reads it, three vowels. He's like, whoa, why did they do that? That must have been a mistake. Then he scans, he finds it again. And why would this happen? And he realized, because just like us, if you were trying to write a word misspelled, every once in a while, you're going to spell it right on accident, especially if it's the most sacred word. And if you put the correct vowel point there on the sacred text, you can't change it. It's right. So you can't go back and erase it or put a box around it, or, it's perfect. So it was just an accident. Both scribes did it. They went through, they were like, Yavah, Yavah, and but they were in their mind saying, Yehovah, Yehovah, but then they just every once in a while put the right little dot and spelled it correctly. That's the theory that he has. I think is a really strong theory, and there's even more reasons why I think that, because that wasn't enough. So sometimes you get all three vowels. Those are a few places. So maybe it's 50 or 100 times. I'm trying to get a list. But 50 or 100 times out of 7,000? I mean, that's a huge, and they're saying that the scribes put in the vowels of Adonai, when they actually didn't, 6,700 times. So what's the deal here? Someone's not telling the truth. So why did Gesenius say this? And others like C.D. Ginsburg, who was a great scholar. I read some of his stuff from the early 1900s. Even though C.D. Ginsburg, he still pointed at Yehovah or Yehovah, because then that's another question. Is it Va or Wa? So I'm going to try to handle this pretty quick, and thanks you guys for your patience. But where did they get this info that the vowels was Adonai? And I think personally, my interpretation is that it's based on a misunderstanding of the Talmud. And so the Babylonian Talmud, Pesachim 50a, this is what it says. The reasoning about these prophecies, rabbis, says, this is your 500, so to speak. Rabbi Nachman ben Isaac says, not like this world is the future world. In the world to come, his name is written with a Yod He and read. Is the future not like this world? In this world, his name is written Yod He, meaning Yod He Vav He. It's written Yod He Vav He, and read Aleph Dalet, meaning Adonai. That's what these symbolize. One says Yod He, meaning Yod He Vav He, but it's to be read as Aleph Dalet, meaning Adonai or Lord. But in the future world, it shall all be one. They're basing on the prophecy. It shall be written with Yod He or Yod He Vav He and read as Yod He Vav He. Now Rabbah thought of lecturing it at the session, whereupon a certain old man said to him, it is written, Le'elam, Bina pointed out the contradiction. This is my name to be hidden. They tried to hide it, but it's actually meant to be, this is my name forever. And so this is back when they're trying to this is back when they're trying to actually hide the name. The Holy One, it says here, the Holy One, blessed be He. And it says, this is how it says, for as I am written Yod Hey, but I am read Aleph Dalet. But in the days to come, it'll be you'll say it. Footnote says the importance attributed to the divine name was owing to the fact that it was not regarded simply as a designation, but it was held to express the essence of the Godhead. This is the key, though, that no one talks about. The right way of pronouncing the Tetragrammaton was not generally known, being preserved as an esoteric teaching, meaning some people knew it, and only the initiated people got it. It was a secret. Okay, note, it doesn't say the vowels of Adonai were inserted under the Yod He Vav He. It says it was read Adonai instead of as it was written Yod He Vav He. Okay, the Babylonian Talmud Kedushin 71a, the 4th century rabbi explains, our sages transmit the 4-letter name to their disciples once in a 7-year period. So it was banned in the year 130 or whatever, 140, but the rabbis hundreds of years later were transmitting it to their disciples once every 7 years. The Jews still had it. The Talmud says it was an esoteric teaching. Okay, 800 years later from that, roughly, 800, 600, 700, in the 12th century Orthodox rabbi and naturopath Rambam Maimonides, the one that I quoted earlier, he says, in ancient times, the name was pronounced only by the priest in the temple when given the daily benediction. Now that's not really true, but this is what he's going with. Or the high priest on the Day of Atonement. But that's not the point. The last sentence is the point. Knowledge of the name, this is 12th century, is passed down among Jews as a spiritual secret. So in the 12th century, they knew it. He knew it. He's the one who copied the Aleppo Codex from the Aleppo Codex to his Torah. He's one of the most respected rabbis of all time. So they knew the name, they just didn't say it publicly. All right. So in chapter 4, Nehemiah Gordon says, page 67, it's common knowledge that Jewish scribes who preserved the Hebrew Bible swapped out the true vowels of God's name with the vowels of Adonai. It's common knowledge, right? Gesenius, Hebrew Book of Grammar, 1830 says, the divine name has not the original vowels, but those of Adonai. Nehemiah on page 72 says, it may have been common knowledge, but it's factually untrue. And I agree. And this is what got me to dig. Because for me personally, this was the one thing that I couldn't get around. And it had me thinking. And it's part of the reason I dug deeper into this. I can look in the scriptures and see, most of the time, it's these 2 vowels. So even if all 3 vowels were the vowels of Adonai, which they're not, it's barely ever in there. And I never thought of this the whole time. And so what Nehemiah has brought out here is huge. Even though to the Yehudim that know, they already knew it. But to the world, what he's bringing out here, this is massive and I mean, life-changing information. It's amazing. So I finished reading the book. And to cap up here on this is in the personal story. Late September, early October, we had met these good friends of ours now from Israel. These girls from Tel Aviv. They come over, and we're hanging out in the morning, and they're loving that we're reading Tanakh and we're reasoning. And I think to myself, I can't get this out of my head, like the vowel points and everything. I just can't stop thinking about it. I can't get the full. It's the first time I haven't been able to overcome a reasoning. And I have no idea about the Jupiter stuff or anything, but there's something about when someone has a good point to me, I got to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like that's a good point. I had to give it to him. And when I bought his book, I didn't know that it was going to lead to all this. And when I had the dream, I didn't know it was going to lead to all this. But anyways, so they come over. And of course, the Yehudis, they're not supposed to say the name. It's traditional. They're not supposed to say the name. So I asked them, I say, I have a question and a favor to ask. They said, what do you want? And I said, I need you to pronounce a name for me with no vowel points. I want to know how you would read this in Hebrew. Since Hebrew is your first language. Hebrew is their first language. They're like, okay. I write out Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey on this piece of paper. I turn around and they go, oh, we're not supposed to say that name. I said, I know you're not supposed to say it. But according to the scriptures, it's the prophets used to say it. There's no ban. The rabbis put a ban on it. But it's really, if you say it respectfully, it's okay to say it in prayer. But if you don't want to say it, it's fine. It just was a thought I had. And they said, but for you, Joseph, we'll say it. And out of just this girl, she just says without a hesitation, without I wonder, or it might be, or she says, Yehovah is the name. And my head, I flew back. I don't know what happened to me. Sai was standing right there. I didn't know what to do. And still, this didn't fully convince me, but it shocked me to my core. And Cypress looks at me and goes, what are you going to do now, Dad? and then I take her over to my sign that I love so much. And I love, I've had so much love for the name Yahweh. And I was like, this whole truth and everything. And I show it to her and I say, well, she's like, what's that? And I say, well, this is how our tradition of how to say the divine name. And she's like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, what? She's not even like, that's possible. It doesn't even seem Hebrew to her. And so I'm like, all right, wow. So I had to figure at this point that was pretty much life-changing. I had to figure it out at that point. Nehemiah claims Yehovah. These girls from Israel, their first language is Hebrew. They said it without a doubt. And when the Most High puts someone in your life, like maybe we met them, of course I hope we have a long friendship, but like just for that moment, that was like a divine appointment. Like, whoa. But I needed more proof. So I read Nehemiah's book. I see all his reasonings, but I needed more proof. Like this was so huge, right? And the book is plenty of proof, but I needed to search with all my might for the correct understanding. So over the past few months, I signed up to be a part of Nehemiah's support team, which I began to listen to these studies, which led me to his thing, Are We Praying to Jupiter? I thought, he's going to expose some paganism. I'm driving on the road like about to throw up at myself because I can't believe what I'm hearing. And I come home and I'm in a bad mood and Christian didn't know what's going on. I'm just like, I'm like, why is this happening? My whole world is like, what is going on? My head is spinning. So if it's not Yahweh, how will we know what it is? And again, it must be proven in the scriptures. Remember, Matthew 5:17, the Hebrew says, the nakuda the vowel points will not be abolished. Okay, so you can study about the Ben Asher family. This week's Torah portion is all about Shemot. In Exodus 3:2, all three vowels are there. So if we look at the names, because now we got to get into the son's name, into the names. You look at the names of the prophets. You have Yehoshua, and then you have Yeshayahu. Okay, so they both mean Yehovah saves. Yehonatan and Netanyahu both mean Yehovah gives. Yehoachaz and Echazyahu means Yehovah grabs hold of. Yehochanan, there we go. And Hanan Yahu means Yahweh is gracious, or Yehovah is gracious. See, it's still in there. Yehosadak and Sidkiyahu means Yehovah is righteous. So Yeho in the Hebrew is basically the prefix of Yud He Vav, and Yahu is the suffix at the end of the word. This both represent the Yud He Vav. This is the Hebrew language according to the Masoretic text, which claims to go back all the way to Ezra. People who claim that Yahuwah and Yahuwah are the true pronunciation, they claim that Yeho is wrong at the front of the word, and that Yahu at the end is correct, and Yah or Yahu should be at the front. They claim it's a conspiracy to cover up the name by the scribes. The same scribes are trusting put the correct vowel point at the end. To me, that just seems like, what? That's getting on somebody's, to me, I'm not going there, because that doesn't make any sense. And, for me, that doesn't seem correct. They're trying to create a correction to Hebrew, and most of these people do not even speak Hebrew, literally. They could not hold a conversation in Hebrew. Hebrew is a language with grammar, rules, and ways that must be learned. And now there are some proof from ancient Akkadian, Babylonian, findings, archaeological findings of transcribing Hebrew names in Akkadian that, like words like Yehoshua, were written Yahushua. And so that would make you think Yahuwah is possible, but that's in the Akkadian language, that's not in Hebrew. So if you want to go to another language to try to prove the ancient Hebrew, I guess that's fine, but for me, what makes sense is to stick with the Hebrew, since Hebrew was the original language that these other languages came from. If it's possible, but we don't need to argue about it. But Yahuwah is actually not possible at all in any form. But Yahuwah maybe is possible. But there's doubt to this and there's speculation. Yet we can read in the text, Yehovah is clear. And then if you think it's a vav, the vav is a wah, which there is, people have different opinions, it would be Yahuwah. That's a possibility. So Yahuwah or Yehovah are possibilities there's possibilities that there was different dialects in ancient Hebrew. Just like you have people in England speak different than people in America. People in New York speak different than people in New Orleans. Like the word oil. And in Texas, they say all. My dad can't say Washington. He says Washington. It's like, that's just how he speaks. So it's you could have these different slight differences, but Yehovah is clear in the scriptures. If you want to speculate into dialects that existed 2,500 years ago to find the ancient, that to me, that's beyond the point. And the idea that we need to find that which is unfindable and not accept that which is actually, the Messiah said the vowel points wouldn't be lost, is right in front. That, to me, is something we can actually know, and it's solid. And that's what's amazing. Okay, these people, Yehovah is clearly from the scriptures, and it's living in the minds and tongues of the Jewish people today in the land of Israel. Those girls, they said it without a doubt. Okay? Amazing. So it makes sense to me to go by the scribal notes and points of the Sophrim, the masters of the language who lived in the land of Israel, who were the authority, the Torah scribes of their day, and it's clear. And every single Bible that you hold today is based on their work. So why not base the name on that? So it's also the living Hebrew. It's a living language. They kept speaking it all these thousands of years in the synagogues. This is beautiful. It's not actually now. It's not even complex to me. It's simple. It's amazing. So what is the son's name? This is easy. So the father's name is Yehovah. The son's name is Yehoshua. Okay? The name of the Messiah is not Jesus. We know that. But it's Joshua. That's the English form. Or Yahshua. Yahshua is kind of like the English form of the real Hebrew form, which is Yehoshua. And some people will want to say Yahushua. But if you think about it, Yehoshua and Yahushua, it's like tomato. They're both, you could say they're both correct. But Yehoshua is vowel pointed, and it's known in the land of Israel. It's a Hebrew word going all the way back. Yehoshua, son of Nun, it's the same. Either way, it's the same, though. It's not worth arguing with someone. And they both mean that Yehovah delivers or saves. And these are things that I'm glad to have it solid. Yeshua is the short form of Yehoshua. So if you want to say Yeshua, that's the name, that's a shortened form of Yehoshua. And Yahshua is not actually correct Hebrew. There's no text that actually makes that pronunciation. So we're a little off there. And that's humbling, but it's good to know. Because now when you speak to Hebrew speakers and you say Yeshua or Yehoshua, they'll be like, you're speaking Hebrew. And it'll make sense. And we can now understand who this rabbi of Nazareth is, who the Mashiach is, and what his real name is. But if you want to say Yahshua, it's like Joshua. And just to think of it like that's an English rendering, So what is his name? His name is Yehoshua. So, okay, just to prove this, that Yeshua and Yehoshua are the same, we should look at a few scriptures. I know the study's going long, but we're close to the end, and I think we should just finish it all, the information. Okay, let's go to Zechariah 3:1. Zechariah 3:1, and the last time I was at the shul, they read this right there, reading Hebrew, and everybody's praying, and it's so amazing at the shul, and they're turning to this, and everybody's got their Tanakh out, and everybody's reading it to themselves, but they have the chazon, or the reader, the chanter's up there chanting it, and he gets to this, Zechariah 3:1, and he says, Vayar Reni et Yehoshua HaKohen HaGadol, and Yehoshua the high priest, and I hear it through the in the shul. They're just chanting in Hebrew, and all of a sudden this word that I know so clear, Yehoshua, Kohen HaGadol. Like, I just get pure chills through my body. That's the name of the Messiah. That's the name of this high priest that came back from the exile. It's a common Jewish name, but it's just amazing. It was just amazing to hear that. And that's his name. It's right there in the text, but they translate it in English Joshua. But literally it's Yehoshua. Okay? Now Zechariah 6:11 gives us a clue. It says here, take silver and gold and make crowns and place one on the head high priest Joshua son of Jehozadak. Interestingly, it's actually Yehoshua son of Jehozadak. So it is. This is Yehoshua son of Jehozadak. Okay, that's it. You got to know who his dad was to prove this. Now go to Ezra 5:2. Ezra 5:2. It's going to speak of the same person, but with his abbreviated name. Ezra 5:2. Okay, and it says, thereupon Zerubbabel son of Shealtiel and Yeshua son of Yosadak began rebuilding the house of Elohim. So Yehoshua son of Jehozadak, and the Ezra the scribe, or the Sophrim, he wrote it as Yeshua son of Yosadak. So those are the abbreviated forms, the short forms. So we can see this is the same name, and just the final clincher of it all, 8:17 of Nehemiah, the next book over, it says this. The whole community that returned from captivity made sukkahs and dwelt in sukkahs. The Israelites had not done so from the days of Yeshua, son of Nun, to that day. Now his name was never written Yeshua until this time, and we know this is Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant, the sidekick of Moses, Yehoshua. Moses changed his name from Hosea, added a yod to the front, to the first, and it made it Yehoshua. That's where the name comes from. It's a prophetic thing, and he's the one that took the Israelites in the promised land. He's the one that prefigured the Yehoshua that was to come, and it all makes sense. So we see here that in the Hebrew Matthew also, the ancient manuscripts that have now been uncovered, most of them say the name of the Messiah was Yeshua. In two of the manuscripts, they actually have it written in the full form Yehoshua. So it's the same name. Either way you want to go. It's popped everyone. Most people are saying Yeshua. I think it's just easier. But Yehoshua is the real, you have the full Father's name. But either one is correct. And so, common question that we're going to handle really quick. One more assumption of the world. How do we know if it's a Vav or a Wa? This was huge. So we have always believed, myself, that the Wa or Wow was to be the most accurate, along with the world of Hebrew scholars. I wonder why. So the source of this is an amazing study that Nehemiah put on his website. You have to sign up and pay a little money, but it's worth it if you want to listen to the study. But the main info I'm going to give you right here. It's called Wow, It's a Vav. It just came out. And this, I had to get this before I could give the study, because I wasn't convinced. But this was actually before this came out, and the Vav Wa thing is when I was really like, it's got to be able to be proven in the Word. We need it in the text to know the difference, because everything else is speculation. So, one, why do all scholars claim it's Wa instead of Vav? It's based on this idea that they came up with at the universities and stuff of a Proto-Semitic language, which people kind of deal with as like a Paleo-Hebrew, but it's really a Proto-Semitic language that all other Semitic languages are based on. Aramaic, Akkadian, Ge'ez, or Ge'ez, how you ever say it, in Hebrew, they say that all came from this Proto-Semitic, and they claim that it had originally was a Wa. Why? Because they based it on ancient Arabic. They saw the Arabs were primitive and still living like they used to, and they thought these people have preserved the real ancient Semitic tongue, and so they have a Wow in their language, and it's a similar alphabet to the Hebrew. So probably the Jews changed to a Vav at some point, but actually we find that not to be the case. You can prove that Hebrew was the original language the way Genesis chapter 1 through 10 is written. There couldn't have been written originally in Arabic or any other language because it wouldn't work. And that's a whole nother study, but Why was Vav chosen for modern Hebrew? Because most Jewish communities in the 1800s, they used Vav. They went around to all the Jewish communities. And the Hebrew Encyclopedia, and another book written in 1981 by a Cohen, Ben Zion, I forget what the title of it is, I didn't write it down, but it's an amazing little book, but it's all in Hebrew. And he was actually a proponent of the Wa. He believed that, but actually he wrote in his book, and I can write more information, but basically the Hebrew Encyclopedia and this other brother, they had similar findings. But basically, there was like 7 communities that said Vav, strictly. And ultimately, like 5 that said Wa. Okay? That was the Hebrew Encyclopedia. Then the Ben Zion, the Cohen book, he actually claimed that there was like 7 or something communities that said the Vav, and 5 or something or that said the Wa and the Vav, and 2 only that said Wa. So if you go by that, only 2 of the Jews in the 1800s said the Wa. Who were they? They were the Iraqi Jews, the Babylonian Jews, and the Yemenite Jews. And guess what? They were immersed in an Arabic-speaking culture. Arabic was their daily tongue. And so, but when they went in the synagogue, they used the Vav. They used the Wa. However, you have a lot of other Jewish, Egyptian Jews, Persian Jews, even though Persian they didn't speak Arabic, but you have Ashkenazi Jews, but you have the Syrian Jews, which is where the Ben Asher family was. In the synagogue, even though they spoke Arabic all the time, they still used the Vav when they spoke Hebrew, which you can't get the Wa from the Vav. If the infiltration seems to have come from their daily speech of Arabic, which is why the Arabic-speaking countries maybe adopted it slowly but surely. But the fact that Jews that spoke Arabic didn't, and they still held the Vav, that's pretty good proof that at least both are Jewish pronunciations, we could say modernly. But since most of the people, a slight majority, use the Vav, they went with it, right? But that's not it. We need to prove it in the Scriptures. Okay? So what can be proven in the Scriptures? And this is amazing. All Jews agree, all Hebrew speakers agree that the Hebrew alphabet, you have Aleph, Bet, but the letter Bet, which is like where you get B, can also have a soft sound of Va. Okay? So Va, the Vet, the B has a soft sound Vet sometimes, which is similar to the Vav. Okay? In the book of Ezekiel, you have this Hebrew word, the Hebrew word for back, like my back, or the back of something, is Gav. It's pronounced Gav, okay? It's written traditionally as Gimel Vet, like Gimel Vet. However, in Ezekiel 23:35, it is written Gimel Vav. End of story. That means in Ezekiel's time and Ezra's time, they used the Vav interchangeable with the Vet, because actually in Ezekiel 23:35, he wrote it Gimel Vav, and Ezekiel 43:13, it's written Gimel Bet, both with a V sound. So that shows we have in the Scriptures proof that it's a V sound is that letter. That blows my mind. Even Nehemiah Gordon said if he could have prayed for the most ultimate revelation of that, he couldn't have asked for anything more. That is the hugest thing, going back to 600 BC, basically, that this, was that. So, and of course I could show you the manuscripts and all this stuff, but unless you can read Hebrew, it's not going to mean that much. But I'm telling you, I've looked it up. I can show you. It's there. Nehemiah shows the Aleppo codexes. He shows the most accurate text. This is, without a doubt, amazing. And it's not even that. It's also in 1 Kings 4:9. In the book of Nehemiah 9:26. It is misspelled with the Gimel Vav. But everyone knows the word is Gimel Vet, and it means back. It doesn't change the meaning. It's the same sound. So it's amazing. Also, in the year 200 CE, you have the Mishnah, the same Mishnah I talked about. They write the word Yavne, which was the center of Orthodox Judaism at that time. They write it with a Yod Vav and a Yod Vet, showing in 200, the year 200, they were still interchangeably in the land of Israel using it as a Vet sound. Okay, then you have poetry in the land of Israel, going back to the 600s, where they interchange the word Levi, which is, they rhyme in these poems, Levi, which is with a Vet, with Navi, prophet, which is with a, Levi is with a Vav, and Navi is with a bet or a vet, and using the V sound as their common theme through this poem. So all the way so going back to like 600 BC to 600, our common era, we have the vet proven in the scriptures and also Jewish literature, and you have rabbis claiming like Sayed Gaon and these people around the year 1000 in Arabic speaking, they spoke Arabic, claiming that Wa was the original. So you could say maybe the Wa was also spoken in the land, but we have scriptural proof that the Vav was used. And I think that, to me, that sets it apart. Why try to go and find something better than what we can find in the scriptures? For me, that's what I need to know. And I'm blown away that I actually found all this stuff in this journey. So we have proof that the Vav and the vet were interchangeable, the proof of the V sound. And the oldest Jewish sources of the Wa that I know of is going back to about 1,000 years ago. So we have it much older. Doesn't mean that there's not, but we have a lot of proof. So we have the Vav and the word Yud-He Vav-He established all the way to the prophets. So, but it doesn't mean there's not other dialects and all that stuff, and I'm sure there was, but we don't know. Why get into speculation? So for me, to see it in the Word was what I needed, and the Father moved me, and it has been life-changing, and His name must be made known. In here, as my research, I've got so many resources here, but you guys have to know, you deserve, this is like such a big topic so this is a Chumash or a Pentateuch and the Haftorah by J.H. Hertz out of London. And here in Genesis chapter 2, and he speaks about the name. And look what they say here. He says, the Lord God, Adonai Elohim, which is actually the two most important names of the deity are used. The Lord is the usual English translation. Adonai is the prescribed traditional reading of the divine name expressed in the four letters, Yod-He-Wah-He, which is never pronounced as written. See, pronounced as written. When I read this, after I read Nehemiah's book, I went up and I looked, and I was like, whoa, they got all three vowel points there. And I read it, Yehovah. I can read it. And I was like, really? And then I started looking this, and they have those vowel points everywhere in this. And then I went back to the JPS, and they don't have the vowel points everywhere. So I was like, these rabbis, they went and inserted the vowels everywhere they could. These three vowels, every time. So my question was to myself, well, are these the vowel points of Adonai? Do they think that? Or like, what's going on? So this made me confused. Like, you know what I'm saying? This was like, but it says, don't pronounce it as written. I went and looked how it's written. And so I wondered. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. This was puzzling to me until this week. So then I looked up in my Ben Yehudi's pocket dictionary that I've had for 20 years. And I look at the sacred name, the Yod-He-Vav-He in Hebrew. Wow, it's pointed, Yehovah. Right there. I've had this book. I've looked at it so many times, it's fallen apart. It's right there. So that's another source. And they write it Jehovah in English. So then, my search in this amazing month, and I have to say, when those sisters said Yehovah to me, you know, we were getting ready for Sukkot, and I was praying and looking, and Sukkot was coming, so I was like, I'm not going to bring this up during Sukkot. It's too heavy. I gotta figure this out. One night late, we're studying. Me and Oren and David are in there reasoning, and we're having a good time, and all of a sudden, I just can't hold it back. I'm like, guys, man, I'm getting like, I don't know what's going on, man, but this book Nehemiah Gordon wrote, and this stuff I'm finding on my own, it's amazing. And these girls from Israel, they said the name just like that. And David's like, whoa, you know, and Oren's like, man, who knows? You should keep looking, you know. And we reasoned like all night about it. But my mind was like, I'm not telling these brothers. I gotta keep it to myself. I don't want to confuse anyone, or I'm not sure what I'm gonna find. But it just came out. Then me and David reasoned about it for days, and I dropped David off at the airport. I'm driving home. Getting home, and as soon as I turn off on the 128, I get this phone call, and it's brother Daniel who's listening in here today, and he's like, Yo, Joseph, what's going on with this Yehovah, man? Is there anything real to this? Or, you know, we know it's not the name. And I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I can't believe. To me, him calling me was like more confirmation. Like, you got to find the name. you got to look at this. The Most High was not letting me like leave it alone. Okay, so I'm in L.A., Jewish part of town, and I find this book. I'm in the Jewish bookstore just looking at Torahs and trying to find anything on the name, really. I'm like, I got to find something. I need some sources. There's got to be more. So I just pick up this book, The Jewish Book of Why, the Torah, written by Alfred Kolach. So I look in the back, the names of God. Open it up. Page 38. Since Jewish tradition considers Yehovah to be the real name of God. Oh my dude, what is going on? Over and over, he says it like 5 times in this book. That Yehovah, it should never be said Yehovah, it should be said Adonai. But the name is Yehovah. Over and over and over in this book. This is written in 2004, before Nehemiah Gordon wrote his book. This proves that the Jews knew the name. He was a rabbi, and I looked him up. He has all these books on names and stuff. He was but it's there. I don't know why he spelled it out, but for me, it was like another proof that like these are amazing sources. Okay, so let's just go to the Exodus 3:13 through 15 real quick and touch on what Moses heard, and so this is what I've been going through. I just have to share this with you guys because it's an amazing personal journey for me too, man. Like I felt like this thing was flying at me everywhere. And I just had to surrender. So verse 13, Moshe says to Elohim, when I come to the Israelites and say to them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you, they ask me, what is his name? Shemo Ma, that's what they say. What shall I say to them? And Elohim said to Moshe, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. All right, this means I will be what I will be. It is a verb the verb is haya. Okay? It's a verb that means to be. Ehyeh means I will be. Okay? It has to do with that he will be with Moses. He is. It has to do with to be, to exist, that he's eternal. And there's a lot. So then he says, and Elohim further spoke to Moses, thus shall you speak to the Israelites, Yehovah, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Jacob, has sent me to you. This shall be my name forever, my memorial for all eternity. So Yehovah, what does this mean? Okay, so Yehovah means, Yehovah simply means, Ehyeh means I will be. Yehovah in some ways means he will be. Because you're changing it that when Moses goes and says, well, he will be sent me unto you, literally. But it actually means more than that, because he will be in Hebrew is Yud-He. But this is Yud-He Vav-He. And it's Yehyeh. So Yehyeh is he will be. So this is Yud-He Vav-He. And what it's understood in Jewish thought is this is a combination of 3 forms of this verb. And the 3 forms are Haya, Hoveh, Yehyeh. He who was, he who is, and he who will be. Yehovah. All Jewish sources agree. That's what the name means, okay? And that means, this is the deep part. He who was with Abraham. He who was with Joseph and with Isaac and Israel. He who is with Moshe. He who is with us today. And he who will be, like in Moses' time, with the Israelites to deliver him. He's the Most High of the past. He's the Most High of the now. And he's the Most High in eternity going to the forward. So he's in all directions and he's ever present. That's what the name means, literally. That's the powerfulness. And so I'm looking at stuff, and these are more sources. And I just, like 2 days ago, opened up my art scroll Tehillim. And I read this before because it has that little reasoning. But I look deeper at it, and it's real tiny, but I look deeper. And so the tradition of this art scroll, Tehillim, which is Psalms, they don't, when it gets to the name, the Yod-He Vav-He, they don't write any vowel points. They have everything vowel pointed correctly, and then they just get to the name, no vowel points, and in English they just say Hashem. You're supposed to say Hashem when you read it. This is what they say. The 4 letters name, Hashem, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, indicates that Elohim is timeless and infinite, since the letters of this name are those of the words of Hayah, Hoveh, Vayihyeh. He was, he is, and he will be. This name appears in some editions with vowel points. I never noticed what they actually had the vowel points there, micro, Yehovah. I was like, what? Yesterday. And others, such as the present edition without vowels. In either case, the name is never to be pronounced as spelled. And I was just like, whoa, so here's another source. They could have chosen the 2 vowels. They could have chosen anything. But they chose all 3 vowels. Why are they writing that? So I'm like, whoa. So this is what I've figured out, brothers and sisters. It's an amazing thing. And but this is the final confirmation of everything for me. After Shabbat last week, I gave the study and I told you guys I was going to give a talk on this name. I prayed that night. I prayed for like serious clarity because this is huge for us. I mean, this is really, it's wonderful and it's heavy. It's life-changing. I prayed for more clarity so I could know for sure. Like, I was pretty sure that the Yahweh thing was tainted. But I needed to know, like, for sure that Yehovah was right. I had all these sources, but there was something in me, like, for all my brothers and sisters to get up and say this, like, I know this, that I can see it in the Word. I have all this stuff, but just something in me, I just needed a little more. You know, like, there's sometimes when the prophets are like they need some kind of sign or something just to, you know, and so I felt kind of like that, like, Father, this is so huge. I need to see this. So, like, show me. If there's anything more that I could learn about this before I give the study, please show me. So the next morning I wake up. I get an email from a Hebrew teacher in Israel that I wrote to almost a month ago. This, like, I had already given up, like, oh, this guy's too big time, I'm not going to talk to him. Like, this was like, I was so excited to hear from this guy. And we set a meeting for 10 a.m. Monday morning, last Monday, to meet on Skype. I was thinking we're going to start Hebrew lessons. We began to talk. And I kind of mentioned the name, you know. I'm like, you know what? I just got to throw it out there. I don't know how he's going to respond. He looked at me, he says, Nehemiah is correct. And he said, I work with Nehemiah. I helped Nehemiah find some of the stuff for his Vav video that he did. Nehemiah is my study buddy. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. This brother grew up in Israel. He's a Hebrew scholar. He's an archaeologist. He studied Hebrew his whole life. He's known since he was a little kid that Yehovah was the name. He tells me, so this was like huge. He's a Levite. He's a relative of Moses. It's amazing. So when he says this to me, he's known us since a child. And then to the final knock it out of the ballpark, he says to me, this is someone who's this Hebrew scholar, a serious believer. He also told me, if you're walking in the covenant with the creator of the universe and following Torah and you're a believer, no matter your heritage, your background, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, to me, you're an Israelite. That's what he just says. That's his faith. He's in the land of Israel, in the valley of Zebulun. He tells me this. And I was, the spirit was so strong. So we're talking about the name, and he says to me, he's known us since he was a child, and he said him and his wife were reasoning with these Persian Jews. And he noticed that they said the name, and they began to talk. And these Persian Jews had never got the rabbinical ban of the year 140, because they were living in Persia already. And so they've been saying the name for the last over 2,000 years. And they say it, Yehovah. So I think no matter what anyone wants to say on their webpage, on their YouTube video, and how they're trying to explain it, that's it for me. I have proof in the Word, and we have oral testimony. It's amazing. And then, so you know me, I got to ask. I'm like, I got to know everything I can. So I say, all right, your family's from England. You probably know this book, this Chumash by Rabbi Hertz that was written, in English and Hebrew. He's like, oh yeah, I know it. And I said, well, one thing about this book is that every time I read the vowel points, all 3 vowel points are there. So is there any way that these rabbis thought those were the vowel points of Adonai? He said, absolutely not. That's what he says to me. I'm just like, what? And then he just says to me, he laughs. The name is the worst kept secret in the world. And that was it. And so, brothers and sisters, this was a true answer to my prayers. And Yah is truly so amazing. And I think he's really drawing near and looking at his people. And the redemption is near. The name is being known. And we don't even have to speculate anymore on Hebrew conspiracies or create Hebrew words. It's here. The name is known. And as the Messiah teaches us in Matthew 6:9, Avinu Sheba Shemayim Yid Kadesh Shimcha. Our Father in heaven, may your name be sanctified. And that as we read, that there's so many scriptures on the name. But we read that the people, let's read this one in Zephaniah. Zephaniah 3:9. And there's so much. This is so powerful, but I think we've absorbed as much as you can actually absorb in one sitting. But we'll end with a few scriptures here. For I will make the people of a pure speech, and they will call on Yehovah by name. He will purify our speech, and we will call on Yehovah by name, and serve him with one accord. Man, so he's behind this. He's doing something. And then Zechariah 14 says, verse 9, and Yehovah shall be king over all the earth, and in that day there shall be one Yehovah with one name. Boom! That's amazing. So, and then as it was written in the book of Acts chapter 3:19, therefore repent and return, so that your sins may be wiped away, in order that the times of refreshings may come from the presence of Yehovah, and that he may send Yehoshua the Messiah, appointed for you, whom the heavens must receive until the period of the restoration of all things, about which Elohim spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets from the ancient time. This is big. The fact that this is it's not just known by select Yehudis. This can be known by the world. This can be known by all the house of Israel, and we can prove it in the scriptures. This is amazing. This is the Mashiach's presence. This is the time of restoration of all things. So as I sit here and I remember the dream that I had, and maybe it was for me or whatever happened with that dream, when I thought back about it, what I got from it was movement. What I understand about that is that the Most High's kingdom is always moving forward. So one thing I know for sure is that from that point till now, I have definitely been moved forward. My life is changed and my heart is open, and I pray so much to be guided and used by the Most High to reveal his truth any way I can, whatever he wants for me, for any of us, that we could all be used. And I thank Yehovah for this clarity. And even though it went against my traditions and the traditions of the beautiful people that I learned the truth from, this is really heavy, man. But it's not, but it is. Because, but this is actually a serious moment. Like, we've constantly been learning, but this is really big. Because the name is so important. It's a step forward. And the beautiful people that taught me the truth, I still love them. I still love everything we learned. And I still love all of the things and all the truth that we share. And the people that aren't even here anymore that taught me the truth. This is why it's so important that we carry it forward. So that all their hard work, they did the best with what they had in their life. So that we can now carry it forward. That's what it's all about. It's a forward progression. A step forward on the kingdom road. So as it says, Shema Yisrael, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad, Hear O Israel, Yehovah our Elohim, Yehovah is one. And as the tradition is, after you say that, you say Baruch Shem Kavod Mechuta Leolam, Mechuta Leolam. Blessed be the glorious name of your kingdom forever and ever. And then Ezekiel 36, verse 26. I think Christy and I talked about reading all of it. There's so much in this that I wanted to read about the restoration of Israel and the restoration and purification of the name. But I'm just going to read 37 and 38 of Ezekiel 36. Thus says Adonai Yehovah, moreover, I will respond to the house of Israel and act for their sake. I will multiply their people like sheep. As Jerusalem is filled with sacrificial sheep during her festivals, so all the ruined cities will be filled with flocks of people. And they shall know that I am Yehovah. He who was, he who is, and he who will be is guaranteed, brothers and sisters. And so as it is written, the things concealed belong to Yehovah our Elohim, but the things revealed belong to us and our descendants forever, so that we may carry out all the words of this Torah. And I would like to say, Yehovah imcha, Yehovah be with you. Amen.